Being Alive by Peter Sieruta. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the kid they called Kenny Wheels would come to watch our aerobics class. He'd sit against the wall, his face broken in half by a big smile, his fist banging double time on the tray in front of him. Some people said he came just to watch the girls. Didn't matter to me. I wasn't particularly shy. And in a gym filled with girls in size 2 pink, yellow, and orange leotards, I doubted he was paying much attention to a size 12 in a navy blue sweatsuit like me. Besides, I was too busy with my own huffing and puffing to watch Kenny Wells in his wheelchair. Until the day Kenny was kicked out of the gym. Mrs. Blair had just told us to pick up our jump ropes for the aeropic segment of the workout. A home ec teacher by day, an exercise fiend by night. Ms. Blair was only a few years older than us seniors, but considered very sophisticated because she was rumored to have a live in boyfriend. She claimed to have invented aeropics, and all the girls were so hung up on her that nobody questioned it. All I knew was that it was the hardest part of the workout. The only reason I persisted at it was to burn up enough calories to justify buying a moon pie or pack of Twinkies on my way home without feeling guilty. The music Mrs. Blair picked for the jump rope segment was especially irritating. It started off nice and slow, hop and pause, and pop and pause, but steadily accelerated to hop, 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 hop. By the time the song ended, most of the girls were on the floor gasping. That particular day, two girls didn't stop jumping when the song ended. Kathy Weiss and Addie Haynes. All through school, Kathy had three things working for her. She was very pretty, very athletic, and had a name ending with I. Addie was also pretty and could run like the wind, but she had so much pride that if you threw a $50 bill at her feet, she wouldn't stoop to pick it up. It probably had something to do with the fact that she was the only black girl in our entire high school. Addie and Kathy were longtime rivals. For 3 years, Addie had beaten Kathy in the girls' division of our school's 3K fun run. There was always some type of competition going on between them. That afternoon, they continued jumping rope, facing each other, going faster and faster, until I wasn't sure their feet were even hitting the floor. Everyone was cheering, urging them on. When Kathy finally fell out of rhythm and tumbled to the floor, everyone laughed. Everyone, including Kenny, whose laugh was loud and wheezy. Addie was too proud to even crack a smile over her victory. She just reached out a hand to help Kathy get up. But Kathy got up on her own, her face red and sweaty. She listened to the laughter and then whirled at Kenny. "Stop that!" she shrieked. "Stop that horrible laughing!" He tried to stop, but the laugh kept burbling out of his chest. "What are you doing here anyway?" Kathy shouted. "This class is for girls only. Ms. Blair, make him leave. He's disrupting everything." "Oh, Kathy," Miss Blair began, then shrugging. "I mean it! I mean it!" Kathy shouted, stamping her foot. I remember Kathy's 11th birthday party when she threw the same kind of tantrum because she didn't win at Pin the Tail on the Donkey. Mrs. Blair shrugged again, twisting the chains of her neck. "Well, maybe you're right, Kathy. I guess we should be a little more businesslike in this class. Maybe we shouldn't allow visitors. Kenny," but she didn't have to finish the sentence because he was already rolling toward the door with his head down, the thumb of his right hand controlling the button of his electric wheelchair. When Addie followed him across the gym, I thought she was going to help him with the door, but she followed him right through it. "Addie, Addie, where are you going?" Mrs. Blair called. She came back and stood in the doorway, her thin brown arms folded across the front of her blue leotard. "I don't like discrimination, Miss Blair. If we're not going to allow people with handicaps in the gym, I'm going outside to run track." "Discrimination? Handicaps? Addie, I'm not asking Kenny to leave I'm asking him to leave because he's a boy, and this is an all-girls class." Addie never looked away from Miss Blair. You don't say anything when Mel Jacobs and the guy from the football team came in last week. But I don't want to hear any buts. Addie Haynes was the only person in the whole school who could get away with that kind of talk. Okay, boys in wheelchairs aren't allowed today. Next week, it might be black girls. She pointed to herself. Or girls with blonde hair. She pointed at Kathy. Girls with sweatsuits. She pointed at me. And then she walked out. An hour later, when I left the gym, Addie was still running the outdoor track. She wasn't the only one out there, but she was definitely the fastest. I didn't realize Kenny was sitting under a tree until I heard him calling out, "Go, go, go!" I said, "Kenny, I'm sorry about what happened in there." He was leaning forward in his chair, following Addie's progress with his eyes. He shrugged. "Blair says she invented that Aero Pixies. What a liar." As always, he spoke with a lot of difficulty, twisting his head as if he were biting the words out of the air. "Blair's a bitch," I said. He laughed and clapped his hands over his mouth. His hands reminded me of lobster claws. The fingers on each hand all seemed to be glued together. His thumbs moved independently. Addie raced by, raised a hand in a greeting. "Go, go, go!" yelled Kenny. "You like sports, huh?" "Watching, not really participating," he said. He was a little guy, but for some reason he had a large, round face, and when he smiled like he did at that moment, he looked like a happy jack-o'-lantern. "Aerobics," he said. "This is my aerobics." He lifted his hand and bent his thumb up and down several times. "Whew! Tired." He wiped imaginary sweat from his forehead with the side of his arm. Addie ran off the track and sat down on the grass. "How's that?" she asked Kenny. "Super." "Listen, Addie," I said, touching her arm. She leaned forward to tie her shoe, her way of pulling away without making a big deal of it. "That was a neat thing you did. I wish I had the nerve to walk out like that." "You could have," she said, and then she turned to Kenny. "Thanks for pacing me." He smiled. "It worked," she said. "I ought to hire you as my trainer for the fun run." "What's it like?" he asked. "Winning? No, running." Resting her chin on her knee, Addie looked off the track. When she didn't answer, Kenny asked, "I wonder, because I don't run. Can't find Adidas to fit my wheels." Addie smiled, but continued staring off. Finally, she said, "When you start off, it feels like God's hands on your back, giving you that first push. And then you're alone. It feels like you're part of the air. You're running towards something." Her voice trailed off and she shrugged. "When I'm running, it feels the way being alive should feel." She looked at Kenny and added, "At least it does for me." She immediately got up and began doing stretching exercises. Maybe she was a little embarrassed, but I wasn't. Because when she looked about running, for a moment, I felt like I could run too. Kenny must have felt the same way because he said, I, I want to feel it." She was bent over, her right hand holding her left foot. She stayed that way for a moment. "Feel what, Kenny?" "Like I'm part of the air." "Okay," she said, "let's go for a run." She moved behind his chair and grasped the handles. But when she tried pushing, the wheels only moved a few feet. "How much does this thing weigh?" "A lot," he said. "My chair weighs more than I do." I remembered back to when I was a sophomore and Kenny had just started attending our school. He used to wheel himself around in a non-motorized chair. "Didn't you have another chair?" I said, "before you got this one?" "Antique," he said, "from when I could use my hands a lot." "That would be easier to push," I said. Addie said, "I'll tell you what, Kenny. Some night we'll come to the track with you in the other chair. I'll take you for a ride so fast your wheels will spark." He bounced up in his seat. "Tonight?" "Where are you going, Nancy?" my other younger sister asked me that evening. My sister was a Kathy Weiss in training, resembling Kathy in everything from her clothes and hairstyle to her stubborn refusal to call me Nance. Nance was plain. It was me, Nance Sherman. Nancy sounded too much like Mickey, Muffy, Buffy, and all the other names the girls at our school were called. Out, I said, letting her draw her own conclusions. With a boy? Maybe, I said, and left for the schoolyard. Kenny's mother was to drop him off at the high school at 6:30 p.m. No one had invited me to join them, but I went anyway. I guess I just wanted to see how Kenny enjoyed running. Nance! Kenny shouted, waving a claw in my direction. Addie didn't seem surprised to see me. She was bent over, attaching Kenny's belt to the back of the wheelchair. Then she straightened and pushed the chair over to the track. No one else was running, but the big floodlights were still on because the football team had just finished practice. The light caught Addie in profile, making her look like a proud princess. How fast will we be running? Kenny asked. Like the wind, said Addie and took off. The light danced over and through the wheels, making spirograph designs on the track. Feet pounded and wheels whirred. And then I heard it. Kenny's voice yelling, "Whee!" His excitement pushed Kenny's voice into the upper register. It was the most amazing sound I'd ever heard. And what a word. I couldn't remember saying "we" even as a child, but to hear a 16-year-old boy shout it just about broke my heart. As they came around the last corner facing me, I could see Kenny's face was completely split by that huge grin. Addie's breath was coming in little puffs of vapor, but as always, she looked cool and aloof. I thought they'd pull over when they made a complete circle, but Addie kept going, around and around the track until something strange happened. The lights were set to go off automatically at 7 o'clock, and when they did, the track went pitch dark. I couldn't see them at all, but I could hear the wheels, the feet, the breathing, the whee! And suddenly, I felt I was there with them, running through the dark. First, I felt I was Kenny, being propelled through the night. Then I was Addie, pounding the ground and pushing the chair in front of me. And then I was part of the air. It lasted only a second, that feeling, but when Addie and Kenny finally came off the track, I felt as high as if I'd been running too. My heart was beating fast and I was taking deep gulps of air. I could hear Kenny bouncing around in his chair, saying, "Super, super, super!" It was the dark. In the dark, we sat and talked. I asked Addie what made her start running. "What made me start breathing?" she replied. "I've always run, but I didn't get into competition until I got to this school. I guess I got tired of being an outcast." "You're not an outcast," I said, thinking cliques and social circles were the last thing Addie seemed to be interested in. She always seemed above that sort of thing. "Now, if you want to talk about outcasts, let's talk about me. I've never fit into anything in my life, including my Levi's," Addie said. "I started entering the races to show them that I can act like an outcast and look like an outcast, but hey, I got it." "It?" said Kenny. "It," she said. "Whatever it takes to beat them. I'm showing them it's okay to be different." "Outcast, outcast," said Kenny. "Am I the only one here who's always been an average, normal guy?" I wasn't sure how to take that until he started laughing, and then I laughed too. Addie's laugh was soft and low. I'd never heard her laugh before. Kenny turned to me. "Don't you run, Nance?" "Only after good humor trucks," I said. "I mean, can you see this body in a race?" "Why not?" said Addie. "My sister calls me the Sherman tank," I said. "I wish I could run," said Kenny. "You did?" "In a race." He said, "Run in a race." There was a long moment of silence, and then she said, "You can. You can run in a race with me." It was too dark to see the expression on Addie's face, but I've always wondered what she looked like when she said those words. The next day, I approached her at school. You aren't serious about running with Kitty in the fun run? I am. Don't get me wrong, I said. It's nice and all that, but it also means you're going to lose. Winning doesn't make that much difference to me, she said. Running does. But Addie, they do have sports events for the handicap. Maybe he could just get into that sometime. No, she said forcefully. He wants to feel like everyone else at the school, and I'm going to help him do it. I said, you don't have to run for him just because he can't. I'm not doing it because he can't, she said. I'm doing it because I can. Because I can. That must have been Addie's motto. I remembered the first time I heard her say that. The year we were freshmen. Addie had just won her first fun run, and Kathy, who had lost by 50 seconds, went up to congratulate her. She pressed her cheek against Addie's, but her eyes were burning with anger. Later, walking away from the award stands, I heard Kathy say in her most patronizing voice, well, Addie, I guess you can run because you're trying for a sports scholarship to college, right? Addie turned her cold eyes upon her. No, my father's a pediatrician, so I guess he can afford to send me just about any place I want to go. Kathy's mouth dropped open just a millimeter, and Addie stared at her. Why do you run, Kathy? Kathy shrugged. Because I'm good at it, I guess. Because I think I can win. Huh, said Addie, holding a long, dark finger in front of Kathy's nose. You run because you want to win. I run because I can. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant, that she could run just for the joy of it. I knew how I'd feel if I ran. I'd want the awards. But now I found it hard to believe that Addie could pass up the chance to win. I said, Addie, you're a senior. This will be your last chance for the fun run. You won't be here next year. She looked past me. Kenny may not be here next year either. What do you mean? He's only a junior. I mean that I've been looking at some of my father's medical books, she said. I don't want to hear this, I said. Remember when he could talk more clearly than he does now? When he could wheel himself around in the chair? When he could move his fingers and take notes in class instead of carrying around that big tape recorder? Don't tell me any more, I said, walking away. I was always walking away from things I didn't want to hear. My father liked to tell about the time I was 3 years old and they brought my little sister home from the hospital. I hid under the bed yelling, Is she gone yet? Maybe I hadn't changed much. That night I ended up in the schoolyard. I knew I would. Again, nobody had asked me to come. Addie wheeled Kenny out onto the track. Keep your eye on the stopwatch, she told him. I can do that, I said. I'll keep you going fast. He twisted his head around to look at her face. I'll cheer a lot. Sounds good, she said, and took off running. Go, 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 I heard Kenny shout. I watched the seconds tick around the stopwatch. When they came back, Addie said, What was our time? I held up the watch and she grimaced. Well, usually I go about twice as fast as that, she muttered. Let's try it again. That's how it went every night for the next 3 weeks. I'd leave the house, leaving my sister with the impression I was going out on a date, and meet Addie and Kenny at the track. I'd hold the stopwatch as Addie ran, and Kenny shouted encouragement. Sometimes I even felt like I was part of the air again. 2 nights before the race, Addie ran the whole 3K just to make sure she could do it. She was wiped out when she got back, and their time wasn't that good. But it didn't seem to bother her. We did it, she said, Kenny. We did run the whole 3 kilometers. We did it, he shouted, and he looked happy, really happy. Addie told us to meet her in front of the school at 7 on Friday evening. For the first time, she made a point of including me in the invitation. I thought she wanted me to time their last practice session, but when I got there, Addie was wearing a skirt instead of her usual leotard. What's going on? I asked. Aren't we practicing tonight? Not tonight, said Kenny. Addie began pushing his chair down the sidewalk, and I ran to help her. Where are we going? I asked. Dinner, said Addie. We walked the 2 blocks to a small restaurant I'd never noticed before. There were only a few people inside, all of them older than our parents. It was the type of restaurant that most of the kids at our school would laugh at. But the Pasta Bowl, with its Italian songs on the jukebox and red plastic tablecloths, was my kind of place. People yelled their orders across the room and ran back and forth with trays of pizza and pitchers of beer. I went to the counter for a pitcher of Coke. When I returned, Addie was saying, it's a good idea to load up on a lot of carbohydrates the night before a race. I usually eat spaghetti. Some people like pizza or pancakes. Oh boy, said Kenny. I want a pizza. This is great, I said. Next time my sister complains about my eating, I tell her I'm carbohydrate loading for a race. Kenny tore open the end of his straw and blew the wrapper across the table at me. I shot mine back at him. I realized for the first time Addie, Kenny, and I had been together off the school track. All those nights we'd spent in training for the race were coming to an end. I didn't want to think about it. Let's get a large pizza, I said. Addie ordered a huge plate of spaghetti, and Kenny and I split the pizza. I sat there wolfing down my slices, and no one said, Nancy, don't you think you've had enough? Or pushed salad in front of me. In fact, Addie offered me a taste of her spaghetti. Kenny said, last year, when our homeroom won that prize for best attendance, we had a pizza party. He paused to swipe a strand of cheese hanging off his hand. When I got my slice, Mrs. Pelton came over and she wanted to cut my pizza into small pieces. Why? Asked Addie. That's what I wonder. She didn't want to cut anyone else's. I said that would make me real mad. Kenny lowered his voice. Pissed me off. He reached forward with both hands and took another slice off the tray. So when she was standing there beside my chair, I dropped my pizza. I dropped it right on her skirt. He chewed for a few seconds and then added, you know how sometimes my hands don't work right? And he winked. Addie and I burst out laughing, and Kenny joined in with his loud, wheezy laugh. When it was time to leave, we all wanted to pay the check ourselves. Kenny took out his wallet and counted dollar bills, while I tried to grab the check from Addie's hand. No, said Addie, I invited you two out. Okay, I said, but next time I'm paying. It wasn't until I was home in bed that I thought about what I'd said. Next time. No one had ever said there'd be a next time. The next morning, I walked into the field in the early morning cold. It was strange to see all the Kathys and Muffies and Phils and Chases of our town out on the track. For weeks, it had been a private nighttime playground for Addie, Kenny, and me. When I finally found Addie and Kenny, they were in the middle of a confrontation with Kathy Weiss. What do you think you're doing? Kathy demanded. We're going to run, Addie replied calmly. Oh, no. Oh, no. You're not running with him. Try stopping us, said Addie. I just might. You better believe that I just might. What is this? Some hokey publicity stunt to get your name in the paper? Something to put on your college application? Kenny looked hurt for a second, and Addie moved in front of him, blocking Kathy from his view. Listen, Weiss, she said, why don't you just accept the fact that now you can win the girls' division and just shut up? Nobody ever told Kathy to shut up. She filled herself up with air to start yelling, but then a glimmer of understanding seemed to cross her face. She turned abruptly and walked away. The race was almost ready to start. I only had time to say a quick, good luck, you guys. Addie smiled. Kenny stuck his thumb in the air. Runners, take your places, a voice boomed, and I ran off the track to stand in the crowd, never taking my eyes off them. His hands gripped the arms of the chair tightly. Her hands gripped the handles. When the starting gun went off, 72 pairs of feet and one set of wheels went zipping across the line. The race course consisted of one lap around the track, then out onto the street for about a mile, and back to the track for another lap. Addie's legs were pumping like pistons, and the wheels of the chair spun so fast I couldn't see the spokes. By the time they had completed the first lap, one thing was clear: they were going to lose. Seeing Addie and Kenny about two-thirds of the way behind the leaders, I knew there was no hope. Of course, we'd known it all along, but I guess I still harbored some secret hope for a miracle. But now I could see Bob Beecham, Gary Rosen, and Peter Astor were shoulder to shoulder at the front of the pack. Of the girls, Kathy Weiss wasn't too far behind them. I'd never seen so much concentration on her face. When Addie and Kenny passed me and started out towards the street, neither of them looked in my direction. Addie was still pumping hard, and Kenny was yelling, "Go, go, go!" I was used to Addie and Kenny's usual pace, where I could eat a big bag of Cheetos before they finished 1 kilometer. This was different. It didn't seem all that long before the first runners were coming back to the field. I wondered how far behind my friends were. Perry Astor crossed the finish line, winning the boys' medal, and a few minutes later, Kathy Weiss bounded across the line, tears of pain or exhaustion or happiness streaming down her face. Then the announcer was calling off the finishes as each kid crossed the line. 38, 39, 40, 41. Then I saw them coming back onto the track. Addie kicking her feet into the air, puffing like an engine. Kenny urging her on. When they finally crossed the finish line, Kenny's fists were raised in the air. They had come in 45th. Addie walked to the chair. Addie walked the chair to a slow stop, then moved away as people gathered around Kenny, shaking his hand, patting his back. Occasionally, above their congratulations, I heard his voice, "Wow, super, super." I realized it didn't matter to Kenny whether they came in first, 45th, or 72nd. He was happy just to be a part of it. I went looking for Addie and found her standing near the stage, watching Kathy and Perry receive their medals. Addie stood tall, as always, and her head was held high, as always, but there was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. "Hi!" I shouted, moving towards her. My first impulse was to hug Addie, but as I got closer, the look in her eye told me to back off. "Congratulations," I said, standing in front of her, not sure what to do. "Thanks," she said, then turned to watch the medal presentation. "You did great." "Nance, please, I'm trying to watch the presentation." I saw a hand go up to her eye and realized she was crying. Despite all her talk, winning had been important to her. It was kind of ironic, considering it didn't matter to Kenny at all. And then it hit me. The reason Addie had run with Kenny was that no one else would. Anyone else could have run with him. Kenny wouldn't have cared. While Addie ran for the medal, I said to Addie, "I never thought of this until now, but you should have been running. Someone else could have run with Kenny. I could have tried." "Yes," she said coldly, "you could have." For the next 24 hours, I was miserable. I was furious with myself for being so dim-witted, so self-centered that I cost Addie her chance to win the race. I was furious at Addie for being such a hypocrite, saying she didn't care about winning when she really did. I was even mad at Kenny because it seemed he was even more self-involved than I was. Didn't he realize Addie might have really wanted to run? Didn't he care that she was giving up her last chance just to give him a good time? On Sunday evening, I automatically put on my army jacket at 6:15. I didn't realize I'd done it until my younger sister said, "Off to meet Mr. Wright?" And I realized I'd been a hypocrite myself, deliberately trying to look good in my sister's eyes by inventing a boyfriend. I said, "I don't have a boyfriend. I never did. I'm going out to find my two friends, Addie Haynes and Kenny Wells." Then I crashed out the door. Behind me, my sister was shouting, "Kenny Wheels? The cripple? And that black girl?" Of course, the field was dark, but I could hear her pounding footsteps on the track. I'd never heard her run that fast before. I realized that all those weeks of pushing Kenny's chair had strengthened her, increased her speed. She ran for a long, long time, even though I was sure she knew I was there. Finally, she came running off the track with a stopwatch in her hand and sat down beside me. Now, if she would only talk to me. She held up the stopwatch and said, "My own private fun run. I won. In fact, it was my best time ever." She didn't seem to be angry with me at me anymore. I said, "Too bad I was the only one here to see it." "Let's walk," she said, getting up. We walked for a long time without talking. I think she was waiting for her breathing to level off before she spoke. Finally, "Yesterday was not one of my finer moments." "Mine either," I admitted. I couldn't believe how bad it hurt to see Kathy Weiss with that medal around her neck. I couldn't believe how much I'd been lying to myself. "I can't believe how dumb I've been," I said. She continued, "I thought I was above that attitude, but I realized yesterday that I'm not. All yesterday and today, I was down, down, down." Her voice dropped lower with each down. And I thought to myself, okay, Addie, so you're not perfect. You're pretty, you're petty, and jealous, and a hypocrite. So what? It's all part of being alive. I wish I could have that attitude, I began. I can't stand myself. Neither can I sometimes, she admitted, and laughed. We walked on in silence, heading for Kenny's house. We never said we were going there, we just did. And we ended up at the school a little while later, Addie on one side of the chair and me on the other, with Kenny between us, taking a stroll down the track. Addie, Kenny, and me being alive.